Finding the right squares for the knights is perhaps not as hard as you thought.
Thanks, Monica. In this lecture, we'll be learning about knights and which squares are best and worst, and also why those squares are good or bad. Now, as you can see in the diagram, I've highlighted that little yellow square in the center. That's what we call the expanded center. It's not exactly the perfect center, but it's close enough. We already know that developing your knights to the edge of the board is not a good idea. You should avoid that. So let's see, e4, e5. Now, which square is best for the knight? h3? No, we don't want the knight on the edge of the board. e2? No, we don't want the knight blocking our bishop. And also from e2, don't forget that the knight only controls 6 squares from f3 or c3. Oops, not that one. And from f3 and c3, we control no less than 8 different squares. And last time I checked, 8 is bigger than 6. So that's why we develop our knights to f3 and c3. On top of that, on c3 and f3, our knights block very little, maybe the queen a little bit, but it's not particularly meaningful. So in this position, knight f3 is the best move. It does have another advantage. It attacks a pawn, so we have the initiative. Again, knight a6 would be ridiculous here because he's doing nothing about defending his e-pawn, so knight c6 is the most logical move here. And white now goes bishop to c4, nice and clean diagonal. And black goes bishop to c5. Yes, if it works for white, it should work for black also. So here we can castle, and black's got to choose in one of those squares for the knight. We already know that knight h6 is not a good move. I mean, white could go d3, threaten to take and double our pawns. It's not a good square for the knight. We already know that. But here, knight f3 is a pretty good move, but is there really anything wrong with knight to e7? Because if you think about it, there's no bishop on f8, so we're not really blocking anything. However, watch what happens after knight to e7. Our knight comes to g5, attacking the pawn on f7, and when he castles to defend that pawn, because there's no knight on f6 controlling the h5 square, our queen can come all the way to h5, like that, queen to h5, and now that pawn is under attack, and so is f7. We've got 3 pieces against only 2 defenders, and h7 is under attack. Only move is h6, but then we can simply take on f7, and white's got a winning attack. The queen is on, and if you take, obviously we're going to take back with the queen, and we have a winning position. So as you can see, quite often there's a huge difference between developing your knight to one square or another. So think about it, and remember, f3 and c3 for white, f6 and c6 for black. Let's move on. Here's a more dramatic example of the consequences of developing your knights to the wrong squares. d4, d6, knight f3, g6, now white goes e4, bishop to g7, and bishop to c4, a perfectly normal position. Now, this bishop is looks kind of threatening along this diagonal, so maybe black should block the diagonal with e6. The move that he played is completely wrong. He went knight to d7, which is a horrible move. It blocks this bishop, but not only that, it also weakens the e6 square. And maybe you're wondering, well, big deal. I mean, e6, there's nothing on e6, so who cares? Well, black should, because watch what happens now. Bishop takes f7, double exclamation mark, and when the king takes, our knight goes to g5, attacking the king. The king cannot come to f6, because then he gets checkmated after queen to f3. That's checkmate, checkmate in 1. There's nothing you can do. So after knight to g5, 2 possible moves. The king goes to e8 or to f8. But because the e6 square is so weak, this is what happens. If you go there, simply knight check, and we pick up the queen. And if you go to e8, very little difference, because we go knight to e6 and the queen is dropped. And who's to blame? I'll tell you whom. That knight on d7 is a criminal, because look at that bishop is blocked. That bishop was protecting the e6 square, and now it's not. So that knight is a criminal, should be put to jail. What a horrible knight. So remember, the knight goes to c6 and f6 under normal circumstances. There are some exceptions, of course, but we're not going to talk about them now.
Please subscribe, or I'll hit you with my walking stick.